President Cyril Ramaphosa faces the tough task of reassuring South Africans how he plans to pull the country out of the current bleak economic environment. State-owned companies will no doubt feature prominently as they've been in the spotlight since his last State of the Nation address. Natasha Phiri takes a look at whether any major strides have been made since the previous opening of Parliament address.
An event of pomp and ceremony. But for the president, it's a time for him to outline his administration's vision and plans for the nation. The country's SOEs are now in the aftermath of looting and corruption, and billions of rands have been lost. In last year's State of the Nation address, President Cyril Ramaphosa said it was time to restore these ailing SOEs.
We are making important progress in restoring the integrity and capacity of our state-owned enterprises. To restore proper corporate governance, new boards with credible, appropriately experienced and ethical directors have been appointed at Eskom, Denel, Transnet, Safcol, PRASA and SA Express. We have established the Presidential SOE Council, which will provide political oversight and strategic management in order to reform, to reposition and revitalize state-owned enterprises.
In that same year, the nation was rocked by the resignation of two CEOs. Pagamani Khatebe resigned as Eskom CEO in May, and shortly after in June, Vuyani Chahana followed suit, leaving the embattled national carrier SAA. With a key focus on Eskom, Ramaphosa emphasized that it was time to take bold and decisive steps to turn around the power utility.
We shall immediately embark on a process of establishing three separate entities: generation, transmission and distribution under Eskom Holdings.
But since then, Eskom still can't keep the lights on. According to a recent report by the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, load shedding cost the economy at least 59 billion rand in 2019. At the same time, the national carrier also failed to take off due to its poor financial situation, plagued with leadership vacuum and numerous industrial actions against them. The SAA strike further crippled the airline, resulting in several regional and international routes being cancelled. It has since been put under business rescue. SAA confirmed it will receive a 3.5 billion rand funding from the Development Bank of Southern Africa. The troubled SOEs have been a major contributing factor to the country's slow economic growth. Vigorous efforts have been introduced by government to turn around the nation's economy in the form of the Annual Investment Summit and the government's Economic Stimulus and Recovery Plan. Government aimed to accelerate inclusive economic growth and create jobs.
The inaugural South African Investment Conference in October last year provided great impetus to our drive to mobilize 1.3 trillion rand in investment over 5 years. The investment conference, held just after 5 months of having come up with this idea, attracted around 300 billion in investment pledges from South African as well as in international companies. A huge success indeed. There was also significant increase in foreign direct investment last year to prove that our investment conference was not just a talk shop where empty promises were made. As we speak, projects to the value of 187 billion rand are being implemented, and projects worth another 26 billion are in the pre-implementation phase. That is progress.
Youth unemployment also came under the spotlight.
Our greatest challenge is to create jobs for the unemployed of today, while preparing workers for jobs of tomorrow. The Presidential Job Summit last year resulted in concrete agreements between organized labor, business, community and government. These agreements, which are now being implemented by social partners, aim to create 274,000 additional direct jobs every year. We have decided that the requirement for work experience at every level in state institutions will be done away with.
Despite all these efforts, the unemployment rate still rose to a record 29.1%. Numerous pledges by local and international businesses in amounting to billions of rands at the two investment summits are yet to yield tangible results. The president also came out guns blazing on corruption.
We have therefore acted to stabilize and restore the credibility of institutions such as the National Prosecuting Authority, the South African Revenue Service, the State Security Agency, as well as the South African Police Service. We have appointed a new National Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Shamila Batoi, to lead the revival. She has been charged with leading the revival of the NPA and to strengthen our fight against crime and corruption. You watch this space. We have no choice but to step up the fight against corruption and state capture.
One political analyst is of the view that Ramaphosa is perceived to be the right man to fight corruption and solve the issues that SOEs face. But it could pose a huge challenge for him if his administration cannot provide solutions.
His presidency in the last year, in the last few months actually, it has relied a lot. The legitimacy of his presidency relied a lot on his ability to resolve some of those problems. But we all know at this point that attempt to restructure ESCOM and unbundle it, which is one of the undertakings that was made by the president last year, have not been fulfilled. And South African Airways has been put under some kind of a business rescue, which is not very clear as to whether that amount to restructuring of the airline and what does it mean in terms of ownership and so forth. So all of these are pointing to some of the challenges when it comes to the president's undertakings to resolve those problems.
Another thorny issue the president faced in 2019 is the scourge of femicide and the violence against women and children. While he had promised to beef up and address the epidemic by expanding and dedicating more funds to places of support, the country reported more and more cases of gender-based violence. In September, Ramaphosa had to announce a new 5-point plan that included a 1.1 billion rand injection to combat the scourge. United Nations Women also stepped in to assist with the crisis.
My own team, the United Nations system, UN Women, are also part of the process of accompanying the implementation of the emergency plan, which is so much needed because it gives us time frames within which to focus on specific aspects of gender-based violence that are unique to some extent to South Africa.
The people on the ground want Ramaphosa to take decisive and tough measures to deal with the challenges facing the country.
There are serious issues that need addressing in South Africa at the moment. Corruption is a huge deal. Gender-based violence is a huge deal. Obviously, I am a female. I am very fortunate that I have never been subjected to that. I'm also gay. I'm very fortunate that I've never been subjected to any sort of homophobia, but a lot of the nation has, and a lot of the females have. Corruption is a massive blight on our society. You know, we need to look at what's been happening in Davos and the comments that have been coming out of there, and you know, we need to go, right, what is it going to take to get this country back on track? Because ESCOM is in a mess, SAA is in a mess.
A lot of children don't have jobs, even those with qualifications. So more job creations, because and there is nothing.
I'd like the president to focus a lot more on our state-owned enterprises, because that seems like the area where we suffer the most, you know. I feel like our state-owned enterprises aren't really taken well care of, you know, and if we can look into working a lot more on that, those state-owned enterprises, that will bring somewhat a change to our country.
I think investing a lot more in schools and education, And I think women's another very important factor as well. If I think of where I started versus where I am now, and just really focusing on that and getting that equality and that balance right, I think is really, really key.
With South Africa facing a potential downgrade, President Ramaphosa has a huge task ahead of him to turn around the country's economic trajectory. This year's State of the Nation address must help restore the country's confidence in its leadership in the wake of a shaky start to the year. Natasha Phiri, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Residents of